National security has become a catch-all for the Trump administration. It's their go-to piece of logic for when they don't want oversight or accountability or explanation or to use logic for what they want. It's become the reason that Donald Trump, the man, is asking for something, not Donald Trump, the president. And when everything is national security, then maybe nothing is. It's part of my conversation today with Steve Cash from the Steady State. Steve spent his life and career in public service as a prosecutor in the CIA and DHS, and spent time living and working in authoritarian countries while he was serving the U.S. And says what we're seeing now when it comes to Donald Trump and national service and the intertwining of those two, the complete almost merging of those two things, is exactly what he saw in those same countries led by dictators. And in this same conversation, we also talk about how much time the president isn't spending on national security, but also his sort of ego security, the changes he's making to the reflecting pool, the arch he's building, the things he wants to do to Penn Station and the White House and the new UFC Thunderdome that's getting built on the White House lawn right now, all in service to and for Donald Trump, the man, and what it means to have a president solely focused on erecting monuments to his own ego and not to the United States. It's Friday, May 29th, 2026. Welcome to Make It Make Sense. I'm Grant Hermes. Well, Steve, thank you so much for coming back on the show, man. I really appreciate it.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Grant.
So I know we kind of talked about this for a piece that I may or may not be working on, and we talked about this last week. I might not be working on this now. It's one of those things where felt like a good idea at the time, and then the more that I've thought about it, the less I'm inclined to write about it, because I'd rather just kind of talk to you about it instead. So
okay.
let's start with the ballroom here. My initial question when I talked to you about this was, the president seems to keep talking about all the security stuff of the ballroom, the drone ports, the drone-proof roof, the missile-proof glass, the missile-proof steel beams, whatever he was caught looking at the other day at the White House or whatever. And it feels like he's giving away things that are maybe things we don't want people to know about the ballroom. What is your feeling on that?
Well, I think it's of a piece. We've seen this trend over and over again. Whenever the president wants something and sees any obstruction, he raises the national security flag.
Yeah.
So it's not surprising. And it's often raised in a way that it's pretty clear. I hate to say it, he's sort of making it up. Of course, there's national security things in the White House. The White House is the executive branch's executive complex. It's one of the most secure places in the world. Yeah, but that doesn't make the White House and everything in it a national security issue. So There's bulletproof glass in the White House. That's no secret. If he builds a ballroom and wants to put something under it, a bunker, a hospital, whatever it is, it's probably not a big secret either. I'm not as worried that he's giving away secrets. I don't know how much of it is true, and I don't know how much of it is puffery. I don't know what missile-proof glass is, or even if such a thing exists. It's a ballroom. It's on the White House complex. It's no more national security than the fence or the roof. And that's not the real issue. The real issue here, it's twofold. One, the ballroom is one of a number of projects that I sort of am jokingly calling dictator aesthetic. And we see this over and over again. It dates back to the pyramids. Despotic rulers who see themselves as designated by God or divinely inspired, or for whatever reason to be the reason that that state exists, they build stuff to themselves, whether it's a pyramid or the arches in Rome or the arches in Paris. It's pretty standard. And in our group, the Steady State, where most of our members have served overseas, many of them in places ruled by autocrats, the sort of constant stream of leader imagery, it's omnipresent and ever present. It's always there and it's everywhere. And it often looks very much the same. There are only so many ways you could put huge multi-story faces on buildings. They end up looking pretty much the same. I was just downtown in
Right.
Washington today, actually. We did some video, and I had not fully taken in, and I live right outside Washington. There's three-story glowering Donald Trump pictures on the Justice Department, the Labor Department. It's unbelievable. One
Yeah.
on each corner of the Justice Department. The message is clear, as with the Arch and the Ballroom. The state is me. I am the center. I am the center of attention. You and I were just talking before we started. The press is reporting, even as we speak, that they just did a war cabinet.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just parenthetically say, when the president of the United States, when the nation is at war, whether or not he wants to keep it, call it a war, convenes a war cabinet, let's put aside whether that's inconsistent with saying it's not a war and therefore I don't need War Powers Act action,
Right.
War Powers
Right.
Resolution action. He went off course and talked around 10, 12 minutes about the reflecting pool, another monument to Donald Trump, along with the Trump Kennedy Center. And, you and I also were talking about now it's going to be Trump Penn Station in
Yep.
New York City, which is my hometown.
Mm-hmm.
These are the actions of an autocrat. And it's very much inconsistent with the American tradition. We don't name things after living people. There's actual laws on that. We don't put the living president's faces on coins, which we're doing now, apparently. We don't build statues to living presidents. It's easy to make fun of it. But I would say it's not that funny. We're being sent signals. These are signals we should pay attention to. And they're signals of utmost seriousness. Yes, there's an element of comedy to it. But I'm not going to wade into whether the aesthetics are appropriate. We just put out an essay on our website on exactly this, the ballroom aesthetics. I mean, who cares if you're going to paint the old executive office building white?
Right. Who cares about that? I wrote about this a little while ago on my own Substack.
Yeah.
There's also a really great piece from, I think, 2018. God, I can't remember who. I think maybe it was in The Guardian, from a style and architecture writer and critic who basically deemed what Trump is into as dictator chic.
Yep.
And compared Trump's own personal places, so his penthouses, Mar-a-Lago, his estates, and all of his golf courses, to like the palaces of Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi.
They look
they looked
awfully similar.
Awfully similar, almost one-to-one in a lot of these places. Not quite, but like pretty close. And so all of that is here. And I think that slip into this is really important, in that Trump is leaving his mark in these ways, and that the ballroom itself, and the security stuff aside, which I do want to come back to because I think there's an interesting juxtaposition happening on the White House grounds right now, but that this is this sort of wrapping the state in himself, or himself in the state, vice versa, whatever, is happening all at the same time. So it's the national security thing is surrounding Donald Trump in the same way that the aesthetics are surrounding Donald Trump, and those are all of the same piece, which I think is interesting.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
National security is Donald Trump's security, is
Right.
his personal interest. The one thing I would disagree with you on, I think you slipped there, and you mentioned his personal places. I think from his perspective, there's no difference between Mar-a-Lago and the White House. They're all his personal places. He owns them. He owns us. We are his subjects. He is speaking and acting and representing himself the way kings of old did.
Yeah.
And, it's not accidental that the movement we've seen, the No Kings movement, resonates, because he's pretty close to doing all the things that kings and emperors tend to do. I would add, also noticeable on the White House grounds, they just put it up, I think, yesterday, is the structure that's going to be the mixed martial arts cage match. Well, I mean, if you're looking for gladiatorial combat put on by national leaders, Caligula's where you look first. And, it's sort of the Roman emperor thing. And they're building it. I mean, I just walked by it.
Yeah.
They're building the
It-
Colosseum, a modern Colosseum
yes.
between Pennsylvania Avenue and between Constitution Avenue and the White House.
Yeah, it
Um,
has sort of a Thunderdome quality to it. Like
yeah.
the specific way they're building it has this weird feel to it. And for like people who don't know, that fight is going to happen. It's a UFC fight through Dana White, who runs UFC, which is MMA stuff, and he's a big friend of Donald Trump's. And that fight is happening on June 14th, which is for technically the Freedom 250 celebration of America's 250th birthday, but it's also the president's birthday. It's Flag Day.
Right.
And so
Not
it's a
also the
fight.
president's birthday. It's the president's birthday. It's
Right.
being representative of the nation's birthday, which, as many school children know, is July 4th, not 14th.
Right. So
Oh,
it
you're
is.
off by
So this
10.
is happening. Yeah, exactly. You're off by 10 and a month, right? It's happening June 14th for
Right.
no specific reason.
Right.
And it's for the president. It's for the, the bread and circus of this thing.
And we did it
And
last year when he had the military do a parade
Right.
for him as well.
Right, right, absolutely. The thing that strikes me is that, and I'm going to do a video on this later, is that there is a picture that I think it's from the NBC tower cam that's over on their DC bureau. But if you look at it, it is split right down the middle between the erecting of that structure for the UFC fight and the building of the ballroom. And so, like, on one half of this image, you've got this national security must have. It is an imperative for the president's security that he has a place in which he never actually has to leave White House grounds, that he is able to isolate himself in this way and then be protected in this, above and below ground bunker they're planning to build. And on the other side of it, it is an open air event in honor of the president, essentially, that will be home to 5,000 people. And so it's this weird juxtaposition that I can't make heads or tails of it. That on one side of this, you've got the president is always at danger and national security is paramount here. And then this other thing is happening. I cannot wrap my head around it.
It does not make sense. And the other thing that, it's sort of slipping in the adversary is not being described as, for instance, during the Cold War, we would have thought about, nukes from the Soviet Union, later from China. During the global war on terrorism through the 2000s, it would have been a terrorist attack. It's the language is that the adversary is what he calls the left-wing lunatics. Or as he sometimes says, the Democrat Party. It's his political opponents. And this is if there is a bunker, the people who were to be kept out of the bunker are, ordinary Americans who may not support Donald Trump. And that's terrifying. The idea that his personal security is wrapped up in ensuring that that opposition to him is in fact dangerous. And where you're going, you can see where this conversation is going, which is political opposition to Donald Trump is more and more getting close to being characterized as a national security problem.
I mean, that was in their brand new counterterrorism strategy that Sebastian Gorka is out touting right now all over right-wing media. And Sebastian Gorka is right now the counterterrorism czar, but is gunning for the head of the National Counterterrorism Center. I think he's got real designs for the ODNI, for Tulsi Gabbard's job. He hasn't announced that yet, but he's been around the president for more than a decade at this point. He seems to be a pretty good slot-in fit for that. They've already got an acting ODNI for now.
That's by order of succession.
Right. So, but I wouldn't be surprised if Sebastian Gorka works his way in there. But at the end of this new counterterrorism report, they said, we will find you and we will kill you. And they were talking about, supposed anti-fascist movements, far left movements, and pro-trans movements in the United States, which are left political alignments, not necessarily terrorist organizations, because the president can't designate those groups as terror groups.
Well, he sort of can, and he did in a way in National Security Policy Memo number 7, in which he described the indicators of domestic terrorism. I mean, the bottom line is the intelligence community, and my last job was with the Office of Intelligence and Analysis in DHS.
Yeah,
There isn't a significant domestic terrorism movement. If there is, it is probably militias and right-wing extremists. I mean, there's always going to be some conduct that would count as terrorism, but that
sure.
isn't. I mean, Sebastian Gorka is just wrong on what he put in there. It is not consistent with what I understand the intelligence has been ever.
Yeah,
Antifa is not this international, well-organized movement. I don't think that most of the attacks have been from trans activists or people who do not agree on some version of what the family is supposed to be. But I read NSPM 7 and I read Sebastian Gorka's domestic terrorism strategy. And I spent my career in the government. I was a counterterrorism center officer for most of my CIA career.
yeah,
I guess I'm one of them based on their definition.
sure.
And that's terrifying. But I can
Yeah,
understand if you think that people like me, people like the steady state, are the terrorists. You probably do want a bunker,
sure.
because there are a lot of terrorists, which is sort of most of the country who, when we're looking at the polls,
You-
if you
I was
define
going
the
to say
people who
that
don't think he's a good president, as
yes, a
terrorists.
lot of people would qualify under this thing, myself included, for writing the articles that I've been writing about, the closeness that this White House administration has to hate groups and and extremist organizations. Sebastian Gorka included in that list, having
Oh, yeah.
personal relationships to those groups, right? So all of that is tied up in this stuff, and it brings me back to this idea that if all of this stuff is national security, then is it one of those situations in which if everything is national security, kind of nothing is national security, and so then we don't really have a way to parse out what's serious and what's not serious anymore?
I think you're right. Well, one, logically, you're right. If you define everything as national security, it becomes impossible to understand anything, because everything, by the way, that it was sort of a very Soviet thing. Sort of every aspect of social
Yes.
life and Chinese Communist Party doctrine, almost every aspect, whether it's how many children you have, how they're fed, what sports does, all national security. It's not containable once you go down that route.
Right.
I mean, we have an additional, I think the Soviets probably actually did really believe that controlling every aspect of the population's social, economic life and personal life contributed to protecting the state, which
Right.
the Kremlin. I have no idea whether Donald Trump really thinks it's a national security problem or not. But I do think both Donald Trump and people in his orbit have realized that if you say the magic words national security and bang the table, many people will concede the argument. And I'll add one other aspect to it, and we're starting to see that now, a response on Iran from the president. He's criticized about the apparent, I shouldn't say apparent, absolutely evident lack of strategy, intelligence information, and thoughtful logic in trying to prosecute this war, whether or not it's just or appropriate. And he says, well, nobody knows what's really going on. I am the only one who knows. It's all secret. So you should not listen to anybody who criticizes me, because they cannot know reality. I
Right.
alone have access to what is real, and I will tell you what is real.
Right.
So that extends to whether there is a Straits of Hormuz and how narrow it is, and are the Iranians, they have drones or not, to whether there's a bunker underneath the ballroom.
Right. Which, like, I know that at this point, referencing 1984 in that way, it feels, contrived, but like that is what that is. That is, there is no reality. There's nothing to see except for what the state tells you your eyes are seeing, kind of a thing. I want to talk to you about sleep, because if you've been following this show, you know the news cycle has been absolutely unhinged. And if the news cycle isn't going to be good to you, your sleep cycle should be. And that starts with the right fabric. And it's why this episode is brought to you by Cozy Earth. Here's the thing. Summer is here and it is hot.
you're already lying awake at 2 a.m. thinking about the headlines, your deadlines, that weird thing you said at work, the last thing you need is to also be sweating through your sheets like you're having a fever dream. That is where Cozy Earth comes in. Bamboo sheets are legitimately temperature regulating, meaning they keep you cool when it's hot and warm when it's not. I know that sounds like marketing speak, but it is just how bamboo works. It breathes. Your polyester blend from 5 years ago, it does not breathe. It traps heat. It is not your friend. They also have bamboo pajamas, which make you wonder why you ever wore anything else to bed. And when I wake up, I put on their new brushed bamboo joggers that are soft in a way that feels almost unfair to the rest of my clothes. Look, the world is a lot right now, and you deserve one thing, at least, that just works. Cozy Earth is that thing. You can go to CozyEarth.com and use the code MIMS25 at checkout for 30% off. And just a heads up, when you use the code, Make It Make Sense gets a cut of that sale, which helps this show keep going. So you're sleeping better and you're supporting independent journalism, which is, what I call a win-win. Again, the code is MIMS25 at CozyEarth.com. All right, let's get back to the show. Last week, I had on Stacey Young from Justice Connection, who was a DOJ attorney for a long time. I'm sure you've seen some of her work.
Sure.
We've talked frequently about what the long tail effects are going to be for the Department of Justice and justice domestically in the United States here. And as we've been talking here, I found myself thinking about what does this mean for the future of national security if this is how the Trump administration is breaking it? How do we trust future national security assessments after the Trump administration, right? How does Humpty Dumpty get put back together here? Because national security is still national goddamn security. Like, it's still going to matter. So how do we fix that? Or is it not even worth talking about that because we're still so far away from the end of whatever's going to happen?
Yeah, I'm always hesitant to talk about after the fixing, the reparative aspect of this. And you put your finger on one of them. It just may be too early. We put out an essay, I guess it's 6 months ago, quoting Winston Churchill. And I can't remember if we talked about this when I was last on your program. But, you can see Churchill during the Second World War, the first and most famous speech, "We shall fight on the beaches."
Yeah.
It's in the darkest days of 39-40. Then it's not the beginning of the end, but the end of the beginning after we start pushing back on the Nazis in North Africa. And then finally, there's the event of Yalta. And I feel like it's way too early to be talking about how we put things back together, how we divide up Berlin. We're fighting on the beaches. But I have some other reasons. My organization has some other reasons for sort of staying away from this. There's some there were hard problems in structuring our national security before Trump.
Yeah.
Difficult decisions need to be made. But I fear that if we start trying to make these decisions now, when we have no real power to do any of them, we're simply going to splinter ourselves and lose sight of what the real fight is now, which is protecting American democracy and constitutionalism. There'll be plenty of time to fix things, and there'll be plenty of people who want to help fix those things.
Right.
I don't think it's going to be me and my organization, and maybe it will be, but our time we're formers for a reason. We're older. Our time is passing, and there'll be plenty to do. And I think the best analogy is the post-war generation that rebuilt the United States after the Second World War, and the post-war generation that rebuilt Europe and Japan after the Second World War. And we don't think about them. We think of the greatest generation fighting in World War II. The generation, I know the boomers get a bad rap sometimes, but did a pretty good job of rebuilding the world. It's hard to believe how quickly that happened. I have tremendous confidence in the resilience of Americans if we get through this.
As you look ahead in the next, let's say, 6 months here, this sort of authoritarian path that the Trump administration is continuing to walk down, what are the biggest concerns for you? Is it this tying these things to national security and the election? Is it wrapping these things up when it comes to, let's say, something like Cuba? Is it immigration? Where is your head at right now? Or is it all of those things? Because it's all a kind of a 6-5 and pick 'em.
All but it,
Hmm.
all about the election right now.
Yeah.
It is a mortal threat to the onward path of authoritarianism, or potentially mortal threat, I should say. And my fear is, and the polls are driving this, the economy is driving this, that Donald Trump and his cronies are going to see what danger they are in as a renewed Congress with a mandate from the people, and an expectation from the people of taking their oversight and engagement in constitutional role more aggressively.
Hmm.
That's terribly dangerous, and I do not know whether emotionally or politically President Trump and others can survive that. And authoritarians backed into a corner are very dangerous. So it's all of the other things you mentioned. Those are the tools of an authoritarian. Not to mention that some of the, what did he call it? The excursions we keep going on,
Right.
they have pretty profound effect and will create second order and maybe even equally dangerous threats to our way of life in the United States. And we were about to see what happens when you cut off a huge amount of oil and transiting commodities through a choke point in the world.
Yeah.
The idea that we are now embroiled in conflict in the Middle East, and we can't seem to pull out of it, and we still don't know what's really going to happen in Venezuela. We are talking about, it appears, attacking Cuba.
Mhm.
There are a lot of really bad things that can happen, perhaps motivated by an effort to avoid the consequences of an election.
Yeah, I mean, the president said today during that war cabinet meeting that we don't need oil or products that come through the Strait of Hormuz, which just is flat out untrue. Like, it's just wrong. There is just no way the United States, in any way, shape, or form, could put out enough oil right now to make up the difference of that. We'd have to like double our max capacity right now. I think I've done the math on that before. It's insane. The idea of another, you know, invasion of another country, in this case Cuba. Trump has posted recently about Greenland again, which
Right.
he's may have found a friend in the new president of Denmark, who is a center right leader, but that's not, really up for grabs in this moment. He can't seem to keep straight what these wars are. He continues to call Venezuela a war, which is not what the administration called it in the past. And then he now is going back and forth about calling Iran Venezuela and back and forth. So it seems that he's conflating these things at the same time. And so, I've had this discussion too this week as well, and it's kind of timely given his third 6-month annual physical or whatever he's calling it now. But are you worried about things in like national security from that aspect, that his health seems to be failing him as well?
Yes. His inability to apparently keep track of things, his inability to keep awake, at least as it appears, all of which are concerning. But it's an interesting discussion we're having because we keep coming back to the same thing. You are asking me whether certain facts are concerning to me, and then you and I both agree that we don't trust any of these facts. We don't know if there's a
Yeah.
ballroom. We don't know if he had a checkup or not.
Right.
Is he really the most fit president ever? According to, I think, what he said yesterday, he is the smartest and most alert president we've ever had.
Yeah.
It's sort of a remarkable thing to say.
Yeah.
So much in a representative democracy that exists and must exist in an imperfect but effective environment of truth. I mean, you can't make decisions as a voting citizenry if you don't know what reality is. Now, do we know what all reality is? No. I mean, we never know. But we're in a state here that there's almost nothing. What is the real inflation rate right now?
Right.
I don't really know.
Right.
How many people are being held in ICE detention? How many have been killed? I don't really know.
Right.
How much money are we spending? Don't really know. I don't know if anybody knows.
Right.
It's, I don't know, or I'm not sure is the answer to too many questions to survive as a democracy in a modern world.
This is my last question here, and hopefully it means that we end on something,
an uplifting one. You're going to give
an uplifting one here. Is how do we start to find the answers to those questions?
We're starting to do it now. We have a joke. The baseline, people say, what do Americans need to do? What's your version? And we joke and say, get smart, which of course is the name of an old TV show that involves espionage. Americans don't know how it all works as much as they should. And this is part of not teaching civics in most high schools anymore. But Americans have to learn so they can try to figure out at least what questions to ask. What don't you know? How do you ask it? So that's number one. Number two is got to be finding allies, often in places you wouldn't find them. There's so many policy issues, and we talked about this just briefly earlier on in this session when we talked about how would you fix the national security community. And there's lots of arguments. It should be bigger. It should be smaller. It should tend towards more protecting civil liberties, less. You can go on and on.
Right.
We got to put those aside. The only thing that matters right now is protecting democracy. That's the mechanism to decide all those things. And that's what's in danger. So that's the second thing. The third thing is a blend of both recognizing that we are in a risky situation that we've never been in before. Being politically involved in the United States, with some notable exceptions, and I'm going to mention them in just a minute, was not something that implicated my personal safety or my economic safety or my job. First Amendment, everybody gets their own opinion. It does now. We live in an environment where you really have to worry whether you lose your license or your FCC license if you're a big company, if you say the wrong thing or insult the president or are perceived to insult the president. No, I said there's an exception. If you lived through the civil rights movement, particularly in the 50s and 60s in the United States, and you were an African-American, there was plenty of risk. If you were gay during the movement towards choice and rights in terms of sexual orientation, there were real risks. But most Americans didn't perceive that. And now we have to. And we have to be willing to embrace that risk and share that risk with others, protect each other. And I'll add one more thing, which I haven't added. God, this is exhausting. And, the attraction of sticking your head under the covers, canceling your whatever subscriptions you have left to the New York Times or the Washington Post or whatever newspaper you partake in, and turning off the internet, or at least like switching to Prime Video and watching Agatha Christie mysteries. Oh God, doesn't it sound great?
Sounds amazing. It sounds perfect. Yeah,
it sounds perfect. Well, we can't do that, and it's going to be a long slog. Up to through the midterms, hopefully into a presidential election where we do all the things that voters are supposed to do. And I just mentioned them. We have to get smart, learn, organize, and then vote. And that's going to be really hard. But that's what people have got to do. Hold fast is one of our little mottos. That's what we have to do.
Yeah. Which is why it's a perfect motto for this. Steve, as always, man, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Great to see you. I hope to be back. Please, I hope your listeners will follow us on social media. We have a website, www.thesteadystate.org. You got to have the in there or you'll end up with some economists who we don't know. They're very nice people. I've talked to them once on the phone. And we're on all the social media. We're doing more video, which is sort of fun. A little surprising.
It's fun.
It is sort of fun.
It's fun. All those links are in the description for this episode.
I'm looking how good you do it. If you could do it, I'm going to try.
Exactly. Perfect.
Well, Grant, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'll talk to you soon.
I want to thank Steve again for coming on the show. He's always a fantastic guest, and the work that they're doing over at the Steady State is also fantastic as well. You can find links to it, like you just heard, in the description for this episode. And that is it for today's episode. Please rate and review wherever you get your podcast. Like and subscribe on YouTube if you watch it there, and sign up for the Make It Make Sense Substack. Become a paid subscriber where you get access to things you forgot from civics class, the weekly reporting, and also Make It Make Nonsense, which drops every other week on Sundays. And share the show on social media. You can tag me at Grant Hermes on Twitter and Blue Sky, and at Grant_Hermes on everything else. Thank you so much for listening today. I'm Grant Hermes, and I'll talk to you next time.